is affecting just the pensions arena, and especially the local government pensions arena. I think the issue is everyone in the audience is providing us with information in some way or other, or needing information back from us. So it just all feeds into each other, hopefully. So I'm just wondering, does everybody, we've got lunch break at past, and I'm quite happy to just fire on, or just take a quick 5-minute break if anybody needs to stretch their legs. No movement, I'm going to move on then. Just 2 whistle-stop tours here, 2 topics that we thought would be good just to bring to your attention. First one, end of contracting out. It's not a pension fund issue. The issue for us will be when people see a drop in their wages next year, they may actually decide, is it affordable to stay in the pension scheme? It is an employer's responsibility to communicate this to your employees. I don't know whether anybody out there has done anything already. You may have done something internally to have a look at what this is going to cost you as employers. But a few points, hopefully, we'll just cover today to help you decide, are you ready? So what's changing? All tied in with the new state pension being introduced next year. And they're going to replace the multi-tiered arrangement at the moment. There's since sort of back in the 1970s, there's been lots of different state pension elements that people have paid into in different parts of their working life. And if at different points in time, if you were in an occupational scheme that was contracted out of the state earnings related pension scheme, they called it the state second pension. There's been lots of had lots of names anyway. But anybody in our pension scheme has been contracted out of those additional parts, and they've been paying in for the basic state pension, and they've had a reduction or a rebate on the contributions that they pay. You as the employer have also been paying less national insurance for those individuals. You've been paying into the pension fund for them. So one was meant to counteract slightly the other one. You've been giving them more pension provision than what they could have got in their state extra pension. So there's going to be no additional state pension, just the basic pension going forward for anybody who retires or is of state pension age after April next year. So contracted out is going to cease. So it's who's affected? Anybody that you've got in our scheme. But for some employers in the audience, of course, remember you'll have employees in other contracted out state schemes as well, or public sector schemes. So some of you have got people who are paying into the teachers scheme, into the national health scheme, and into the fire scheme. So it's not just an LGPS issue. If you're paying into other public sector schemes that are contracted out, and of course it affects all of those. So what's it? We've put what's it going up by. The message coming from the centre at the moment is the national insurance isn't increasing, you're just not getting a rebate anymore. So take into that what you want, but basically employers' rebates at the moment, you're getting 3.4% difference between the thresholds. That secondary threshold currently set at the moment at 676 per month. Employees' rebate is 1.4%, so it's going to be a slightly less change for employees, but again, they will be paying more national insurance. So, one thing, have you already accounted for this in your budgets? Hopefully anybody in finance has. The message we've been trying to trickle it out, and there is information coming from the centre, so hopefully everybody has taken the fact that your budgets will need more money next year to cover your national insurance costs for your employees. Have you already looked at your payroll system? Can you accommodate it? Have you thought to talk to payroll? Do they already know what they need to do? Have they put those changes in place for you? There's really no point asking them in April, have they done it correctly, when you haven't asked them preemptively. So make sure your own internal communications are where they should be, really. And we've covered, have you got it in your budget going forward? This is just a little bit of an example. What's it going to affect an individual, what you may expect. We're putting out a newsletter later this year that is going to go to everybody's home address. And we're currently expecting, just to cover this, we have already put it into an earlier newsletter just so as it wasn't, and it came out of the blues for our members, but we all know that not everything we send out gets read. Not everything we get sent out to all of the members in the audience always gets read. Most of the time we do try and ensure we do not just spam you, so please glance over what we do send and ensure if it's not relevant to you, if there's somebody else it should be going to, please just check with them that they do get our updates and pass it on. Becky does, people are quite actually open sometimes and they just go, we almost want to put anything coming from Rebecca Perfect into our spam folder. No, please don't read it. It's all relevant. Becky's got very broad shoulders and she takes it on board, but we do try and ensure we send you exactly what you do need. So just a little example here. You can have a look at the difference yourself, but what we're looking at is a member who's earning around about £15,000. They're going to pay £10.70 a month extra, and the employer's going to pay £26, just under £26 extra a month. So not huge sums for the individual, but it's still an extra cost. So the individuals will see their national insurance go up, and I think for you as employers, of course, it's the more people you employ, the more it's costing you. So just a few points up there. Have you determined who's affected? Have you instructed your payroll? Do you know how you're doing it? Make sure you are using the correct tables. We've done a little short link there because the link is huge. And have you done any communication? If you have an intranet, is there just anything up on there? We're going to, as I said, communicate slightly on the message, but the message from the centre is that it's not up to us, it is up to employers. But we just didn't want it to be a surprise. So we think for our members, we are trying to just make them aware of it. And just to try and ensure that they know it's a change from the centre, it's not a change that's coming from us or from you. I think that's the other element. They will see a reduction in their wages if they're contracted out, national insurance payer. But the issue is it's nothing to do with either of us really, but we do just need to cushion that message for them and get them to know that they'll see a slight reduction. We're not going to be changing in the LGPS. A lot of private sector sort of trustees have been have the leeway to actually change their regulations. They can change their benefit structure, so they can look to actually change how much an individual pays into that pension to try and cushion the blow really, or make it that the employer doesn't have to pay in as much as well. We can't do that, so there'll be no change to our legislation at all. There is a Q&A that's been forwarded to you from the Local Government Association that's for your members and for yourselves. So we have forwarded that to you, and that's on if anybody doesn't use the Local Government Association's website. They've invested, we as a fund pay them, all the funds, the 89 funds across the country, pay them a sum each year that actually allows them to employ people that do deal with central messages on pensions. And the information that they've now got up on their website for employers is vastly improved over the last few years. There's a lot of advice there on HR advice and payroll advice, so it's worthwhile if you don't use their site. We will signpost you to it anyway from ours, but there is some worthwhile information there. There are some YouTube videos for your employees, so there's information around if you just want to put it on your intranet, just to tick off that your employees can't say you didn't tell them that they would start seeing a reduction in their wages. The Department for Work and Pensions are still working on information. They've sort of started their trickle, but they are expecting to have more things coming out later this year, and then they'll have some more information next year. Any questions on that? It's only a small topic. It was just, we've got you in the room. I just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that. No? outsourcing and the LGPS. Anybody in the audience who came to one of the previous training sessions that we did, John kindly covered this in a great deal of detail. I'm not going into the same detail. I've only got 15 minutes and hopefully I can shorten it so that we can get lunch. But today it's looking at what happens on the ground. What have you got to do as an employer that if this affects you? Most of the, looking down the employers that are in the audience, most of you this is affected and are affected by this. Some employers are sitting on the other side of the fence, so they're actually employers whose services have already been outsourced to. So hopefully for those employers it will be useful because they will just ensure that any tenders that they're looking at, that they've covered the right information. So there's a couple of sets of guidance. There's a pension direction order for local government. There are academies in the audience covered by New Fair Deal. This is legislation out there that actually it says what you need to do if staff employed on contracts are being let to a third party, that you've got to ensure. And the insurance really is that those individuals have a right to enforce their pension going forward, so they're allowed to stay in the pension scheme. The local government pension scheme regulations at the moment, 2013, those are the current ones we're working under. There's a lot of information in there of what needs to be covered in admission agreements and all that. So one thing I will start in this presentation, and I think I'll probably end with it, is contact us. If you are looking to put a service contract out, it might be a service contract with one person on it, it might be a cleaning contract, it might be a catering contract. If you have an employee that's basically covered by TUPE, you need to contact us because if they are in the pension scheme, they'll want continued membership. If they're not in the pension scheme, they're still eligible to be. Just because they've opted out, they're still eligible and that eligibility continues forward. So just because you might look and go, they're not in the pension scheme, they decided to opt out, that doesn't necessarily matter because they still keep the eligibility going forward. So just contact us. So your protection is TUPE. That doesn't cover the pension protection. It's, as I just mentioned before, there's two other pieces of statutory sort of guidance or rules out there that cover the pension side of things. TUPE doesn't go quite as far. It sort of just says basically you have to make sure that any pension rules out there get covered, so it's covering auto-enrolment, but it doesn't go beyond that. So basically, you're looking at, if you're a best value employer, so if you're a council, town council, you're looking at the Pension Direction Order 2007. If you're an academy, you're actually now explicitly covered under the Fair Deal, which was the information it updated. It's called New Fair Deal. Fair Deal has been around for a long, long time. And there used to be some central guidance that initially covered local government from that, and you were meant to follow the Cabinet Office's guidance. But New Fair Deal came out and explicitly discounts local government, as in councils, but it does cover academies. Academies were falling into a black hole before, and there sort of wasn't legislation that explicitly said that they had to cover their staff. They've now got this Fair Deal that does actually mean you need to protect them. Oh, one push on there. We have had, sometimes it can happen with schools, so I'm not just explicitly talking about academies, but of course LG employers in the room, you've got a lot of schools that have delegated responsibility and maybe letting contracts, they have the power to let the contracts themselves and they don't necessarily come to the centre for their advice or guidance. What we do want to try and get the message out there, if they're contracting somebody to advise them on letting a contract, those advisors don't necessarily understand. They follow the TUPE rules, but they're not actually aware of the extra rules that they should be protecting those staff on. So I think it may be, you need to ensure that any guidance you're giving your schools covers and ensures that they are knowing that they can put you, or the main councils, into a state if they don't follow the rules properly. So where does it start? If you're letting a contract, usually you've got to follow some sort of formal process. So you're looking to put an invitation to tender out or some sort of document. So you need to look at your internal processes. How do you let somebody know that you are looking to let a contract out? And if you are putting something together, then what you need to do is you need to be giving them information. A, this needs to be on a level playing field. You don't want to not protect these employees and then find out that you've got an employment tribunal on your hands, or you've got to compensate these individuals because you've actually given away some of their rights. You need to know what schemes are in place. So if you're an employer that's got beyond the local government scheme, you've got NHS people that have been transferred to you who are still in NHS scheme, or you've got teachers or firefighters or anything like that, you need to be knowing what schemes are in place that you need to be telling these possible contractors about. How much does it cost? Just because you know what your employer contribution rate is, isn't necessarily going to be the same for that new contractor. We need to actually assess what that new employer might pay. So you need to talk to us about it. We will then contact John. He likes getting requests for admissions or possible admissions, and some of those are, you need to assess whether if it's a big transfer, you definitely need all of that information up front. If it's of one person, if you don't know whether it's going to get contracted out, you may want to wait later on and explicitly put it in the tender that the contractor has to ensure this is done before the contract is awarded. But in circumstances like that, you just take the risk that it may impact on your negotiations later down the line if you haven't had all of that information up front for that contractor to do a proper bid for you. How much is it going to cost them? John's talked about deficits. We at the moment haven't got enough money in the pension fund to cover those liabilities. So if you're going to transfer a person or a group of people to a contractor, remember that person has benefits that's going with them. Those benefits, you only have so much assets in your pot to cover their liabilities. So what are you going to do with that gap? Usually, you will give a transfer on a fully funded basis. You don't have to, but you need to be aware of what impact could that actually have on you. How are deficits on exit going to be treated? So you may only just be thinking of letting a contract, but in that information, in that tender documentation, how are you going to actually be treating that admission or that contract closure? If those deficits, even though you transfer it fully funded, assets and liabilities matched at the beginning, if they don't at the end and the new contractor has a deficit, are they going to be expected to pay for it? Is it going to roll back to yourself? So some of these things need to be thought about even before you're actually thinking of putting this documentation together for your tenders. Admission agreements and bond requirements, these are legal documents that need to be entered into that take quite a while to draw together to agree. So again, you need to have a look at your time frames. So provide your details as soon as you know what you're doing, and we can give you some advice around what we think it's going to impact on. Some of the information there that you need to be able to give us, so depending on where you are in your process, you need to be looking to give us quite a bit of information that you wouldn't think that we actually need, but some of this we will need to share with the actuary. They need to know how long is the contract going to be, because we need to know how to build up any risk profile of how we set that contribution rate in the first place. One element that takes quite a while is getting your staffing information together. We do need pre and post 2014 pay, and that sometimes can take a while to get together, but it's all needed. Just goes back to when John was saying, just for the valuation, they have to work out all of the sets of benefits nowadays for people, and remember people's benefits are now in several sets of sections of our scheme, so we've got different definitions of pay. I've given you a guesstimate at some time frames here. There isn't any point telling me we've just let a contract, because that can then actually delay that contract, because you put your individuals at risk that they won't have pension protection. So the more you think, take it backwards, you need possibly a month to collect your staffing information. You might be able to do it quicker than that. But also the pensions team need to work on that data. If we're then going to send it to the actuary needs a good month to work on those calculations. This is all before we can get that information back for you to put into your invitation to tender. So it's just trying to get the message today that the more contracts, all of the employers are looking to get your work, your back office functions, your cleaning, catering, all sorts of things done cheaper. But just remember, if this is going outside and you've got an employee attached to that, you need to know all about the pensions. Admission agreements can take a week if they happily will sign up to our admission agreement. If it's toing and froing, it can take, average is sort of 2 months. We've known them to take 2 years because the other contractor will not sign up to it. So it needs to be in your invitation to tender that they must, it's part of the contract that they must sign up to the admission. The admission agreement is the agreement that actually gives that protection to your staff. But in your contract, you must ensure that there are certain things in your contract that actually allow you to offset contributions if the employers don't pay them over to us, because you're actually underwriting this to the pension scheme. So costs, think about, you will need to pay for actuary assessments. Do you want to pass those on to the winning contractor? You just need to put that information in your invitation to tender. There's going to be legal costs. Those will be yourselves. So the fund actually doesn't charge you itself. It's all part of what you're paying for in your employer's contributions. But think about your contract negotiations. Are you going to want the contractor to take all the pensions risk? They're getting more savvy now. They will argue, and a lot of them do not want to take it. So you need to be aware of this beforehand, because you need to have thought of some of these implications of what you are willing to negotiate on before you possibly get to that stage. Are you going to risk share? Are you actually going to use this is referred to as a pass-through arrangement on employer costs? So it doesn't matter what the actuary assesses that employer's cost to do, you'll allow them to adjust your contract price. All sorts of things to think through and discuss with us beforehand. And all of these things need to be covered in your service contract, and they're not necessarily covered in the admission agreement. These are contractual issues that are outside of the new contractor's admission into the pensions fund. So you've got to enter into an admission agreement. You need to decide, is that going to be open or closed? I'm not going into the details, but this is open or closed. It will affect the cost that contractor is going to pay, but also it reduces the risk just to the people who are transferring if you close the scheme. The transferring employer, so yourselves in the audience, if you're in one of these categories, you underwrite the pension liabilities for the pension fund automatically. That sometimes comes as a bit of a surprise to some transferring employers, especially the schools. And if they're still an LA school, they're letting a contract that the local authority is then going to underwrite, not the actual school. So that's why you need to just be making sure that they're fully aware of this. They can be doing something that then the employer, not themselves, actually is underwriting. What's the impact on yourself as a transferring scheme employer? If this is a big transfer, if it's a large number of individuals, how is it going to actually impact on your standing in the scheme? This small transfer wouldn't probably affect an awful lot on yours, but if it's a large one, it may do. Pension scheme administration, does that contractor know what they're going to have to do in the pension scheme? Just communicating with your staff, have you covered all of those elements? Employer policy statements, we've talked and we're going to talk about that this afternoon again. You'll have your own policy statements. Are you going to insist in the contract that they take those over, or are you going to allow them to actually change them themselves? That needs to be covered in your contract. We need lots of information from the new contractor as well. If we get to know about it, if you keep us informed of the process, we can then actually start communicating with them as well, just to let them know what they need to do with us to get this up and running, and then what they need to put in place to actually administer their responsibilities going forward. even if they're only taking on one person, two people. You think about you in the audience that you've got tens, 20s, hundreds, thousands of employees you're coping with. A new contractor may only have one employee, but he's going to need to do exactly the same as you do, just on a very small scale. The admission agreement is a legal agreement. You have to sign up to it if it's a three-party agreement. So if there's a contract in place for a service, you will also be having to sign up to the admission agreement as well as the new employer. And it must be in place from when that contract starts. And that should be part of your contract, that the admission agreement is signed up to and in place already, or signed the same day. Did say a whistle-stop tour. It is really just to try and get the message out there, because we still do get to know about contracts that have been awarded basically the day they've been awarded, or a contractor will contact us and then say, I've won this contract, can you give me my employer contribution rate, and it started last week. So it's just a message. If you are letting them, please just contact us. Any questions? No? Lunch then. Thank you all. See you back. What time? 1:15 back in here for the afternoon session.